In the state of Oregon, in a dense forest near the small town of Blythe, there have long been legends about dark places where you could not stop for the night. One such place was the forest, which the locals called the Forest of Black Trees. And while most people simply ignored these stories, a young adventurer named Jake decided to find out if it was true. Jake was a desperate traveler. He was not afraid either of the fact that the forest was particularly dark, or of the fact that abandoned houses and old cemeteries came across on his way. He perceived all this as part of the magical mystery of wild nature. However, there was something special about this forest, something that even the locals were afraid to say out loud. At night, when Jake went deep into the forest, he immediately felt that this was not just another natural corner. Here the air was heavy, almost breathless, and the trees seemed like elongated black silhouettes that absorbed the light. The forest was silent, and it was more frightening than any sounds at night. After a few hours of walking, Jake noticed that his compass started pointing in the wrong direction, even though he was sure he was going in the right direction. At first, he thought it was just a technical fault, but when he tried to go back, it seemed to him that the trail led nowhere. Every step seemed to him less and less sure. And then he saw the first strange thing. On one of the trees was carved a symbolic image, similar to an ancient sign. Jake came closer, but immediately felt a cold look behind him. Looking around, he saw only an empty forest. After a few minutes, he heard footsteps, but not human. They were heavy, like the tracks of wild beasts, but not quite like any of the animals he had encountered before. Jake stopped and listened, but everything around him suddenly became too quiet. His heart began to beat faster, and without waiting any longer, he dashed through the forest at random, trying to find a way out. When Jake collapsed from exhaustion, he couldn't get up. I realized that I will stay here, in this forest, forever. Trees and shadows absorbed him, absorbed everything that was with him. The last moments passed in his mind. He saw the same figures with fluorescent eyes in front of him. They were everything and nobody at the same time. When Jake collapsed from exhaustion, he couldn't get up. I realized that I will stay here, in this forest, forever. Trees and shadows absorbed him, absorbed everything that was with him. The last moments passed in his mind. He saw the same figures with fluorescent eyes in front of him. They were everything and nobody at the same time. When the rangers found his backpack and some footprints on the ground a few days later, all that was left of Jake was a blank stare at a nearby black tree. Locals no longer remembered this forest. They knew that those who leave it do not return. And if you hear shadows in the dark, do not look for them. They will find you themselves.